Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Joshua, and welcome to a conversation with Joshua T. Berglan. Today, we have a really awesome guest. I was actually blown away when I saw the email because I followed this person on social media probably for about 10 years before I got off of before I got kicked off Facebook. I followed this person and just always mesmerized by the talent, the gift, and just really all that she's up to. Dame Clarissa Burt. Now, the reason I had to look at my notes is because she has been knighted, seriously, by the Royal Order of Constantine. What an honor is that? I've never spoken to anyone who's ever had such an honor. So I feel like I'm meeting royalty in a way. And not that I'm a big on following or have hero worship or anything, but there's people that I admire. Clarissa is one of those people. My goals in media and what I want to do and how I want to use media to elevate other voices, especially the voiceless. She's somebody that I look to as inspiration because of all that she's done in media. She's uber talented. Her list of accomplishments are like I would be here for a week reading her bio because there's just accomplishment after accomplishment. So the fact is this, I am so honored. And when I say uber best-selling author, it's when someone wins a multi-platinum award for music. She's done that with books all across the board. CEO of Limelight Media. She does an amazing job. Anyway, I'm just giddy excited to talk to her and excited to pick her brain, find out what she's up to, because people like her, they never just sit around and wait for things to happen. They're action takers and they're making things happen. And those kind of people inspire me. This is the very first time we've ever spoken other than email. And I am just absolutely honored to introduce to you Dame Clarissa Burt. Thank you for being here, everyone. And please welcome our guest. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a conversation with Joshua T. Berglan. And I hope I say this right, Dame Clarissa Burt, correct?
That's it. That just
now,
and then there's that.
when I think of Dame, I think of like old mafia movies and like the mobsters talking about the great dames, and then but come to find out, Dame means something way more amazing than what the mafia movies made it sound like years ago. You've actually been knighted by Constantine, is it? The Constantine Foundation?
The Sovereign and Royal Order of Constantine the Great, of Cappadocia, Constantine the Great, and St. Helen, which is a lovely honor that was bestowed upon me in June in Las Vegas. The prince came over from Spain, and there was obviously a lot of pomp and circumstance, and it's a lovely honor, and it's I'm looking for the word riconoscimento, and I can't come up with the word in English. It's an honor. Let's keep it at that. Been knighted, and I think it's a way of it's an appreciation. I think also for some work that has been did a lot of work, social work in my lifetime, and I had 2 private audiences with Pope John Paul. I lived in Italy. I was in Rome. We were homies, and so it was. And I worked on television, and so it was just they were really great years. Lots of fun.
I've so much that I'm going to talk to you about, but before we get into anything, I would love to know, what are you grateful for today and why?
I'm grateful for the fact, first of all, that I had warm blankets on. I've got a full pantry. I've got family that loves me. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm always happy for the things that most people, I think, take for granted. I'm happy that I'm not laid up in a hospital bed somewhere. I'm happy that I don't have a child that is laid up in a hospital bed, that no one that I know is terminally ill. I get up and I think to myself, every time I take a trip, I get in the car and I'll take a trip and I come back. I pull it into the garage and I thank God for getting me home safely. And every universe, I just say, thank you, universe. Thank you, God. I'm getting rid of the dinging. And just be thankful for every time I take a trip and every time I come home and I get home safely. I thank the stars above that I did get home safely. So I think there are a lot of the little things, which are really big things if you stop to think about it. I have a full pantry and a warm bed, clean running water. Come on. Those are the things that I would, and if we want to go deeper, I can be here all day for the things I'm grateful for, but the top of mind things are certainly those.
Wow, that to me is beautiful gratitude. Especially when somebody like yourself who has accomplished so much. I said in the opening that you didn't see that I followed you for years on Facebook, and I've just seen all that you've been up to, and you're just truly inspiring for me and what I want to do with independent media. You have done so much, and it's so cool. Like even your book, and I use this reference, it's like multi-platinum when you have that for a record. You've done that with one of your books. Like, that in itself is such a huge compliment. But then being knighted, your success in media, all of that stuff is just so inspiring. And yet here it is. Your gratitude is for the things that really truthfully matter, because all of that other stuff can go away and no longer mean anything, but yet family, health, warmth,
Absolutely.
clean water,
All
that stuff matters.
just blankets, coats, socks. Sometimes I was on Survivor. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, you won, didn't you?
I did.
How was that experience? Again, there's so much to talk to you about. Like Celebrity Survivor is like the one, if I could think of a reality show that I would do, Survivor is it, or The Greatest Race, where you travel around and act like.
Yeah, that's fun too. I would love to do that. Would be a lot of fun too. I think that's really where I went, whoa, this whole gratitude thing, there's something to it. Because when you go on to an island with another 11 people that you don't know and probably aren't going to be crazy about, and they're not going to be crazy about you either, and you try to get along, you go along to get along, and then you realize warm socks, what it really means, that extra blanket, what it could have meant, food, because you don't eat, right?
Yeah.
Clean water was rationed. There are a lot of different things that happened, and that you look around, you, wow, I'm really lucky. We're all so damn lucky. I wish we could all just stop bitching for a minute to understand just how lucky we really are.
Oh, we're so blessed. We're so blessed. I want to ask you though about that experience, because look, I've been on enough sets to know how things can get scripted, or how you can make something look organic, but it's really not. But the thing with Survivor, it seems like it would be really hard to fake. And I'm sure you've signed a bunch of NDAs, but it's pretty authentic, is it not?
Even if I had said it was over 10 years ago. So I can tell you I had to sign liability clauses. So if I were
That's
to
a
get
good sign for authenticity.
Well, yeah. So listen, you're going to be on this island for the next 2 to 3 months, and you're going to be cut off from anything that you'd be familiar. And if you get hurt, that's on you. So I signed that away. But I'm telling you, everything that happens on there is the God's honest truth. No words are put in your mouth. Nothing is scripted. I think that behind the scenes, as it plays out, they learn the personalities.
Sure.
And then, when they do come on, because you get a doctor, a psychologist that comes on every week to talk to you. And funnily enough, it was like I was analyzing the psychologist. They would come on and go, Clarissa, how you doing? I'm going, I'm great. How are you? Well, wow, it's really tough, but yeah. And so I wound up like analyzing the psychologist when they would come on every week. It was fun. Look, it was a lot of fun. We could also go down the rabbit hole when I found a kilo of cocaine on the island, but I digress.
It depends on what year that would have been for me, but I may not have told anybody and snuck off in the woods somewhere. I'm glad to be past that part of my life now.
Right, those were the 80s, honey. But yeah, so there was a lot of that going on. Look, there was nothing scripted, nothing fake. Everything played out as it was supposed to. And it was fun, and it was eye-opening. And you learn a lot. But I had said no to it for 100 times. Said, look, I'm not doing it. I'm not coming. I'm not doing it. I don't want to do this. I'm not doing it. And then they told me how much money I could potentially make. And I said, all right, book the flight. But it was good. It was good. It was a good exercise. I did it because I could. I'm not married. I don't have children. So for me, I don't have animals. It was like a suitcase and off I go. And I love my life like that. I love being able to just get up on a moment's notice and go. So, but I will tell you that it was an extraordinary event. It was eye-opening on every level. And that I think at the end of the day, the takeaway would be you really be very careful of who you give your trust to.
What did you learn about collaboration?
Be very careful about who you give your trust to.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah, because you're supposed to be like, I got into this thing, and people are like, oh no, you don't know. We're supposed to be creating strategies and then aligning with different and then you create your little group. And I'm like, guys, I don't know. Where am I going? Who wants me? I'll go anywhere. What's it? It was that kind of thing. And the more I think you strategize and the more you think you have things under control, the more the probability is that things are going to fall apart underneath you. It's just, and I think that's what's another life lesson. It was like, you think you got all the control in the world and you got it all strategized and you got it planned, and then life happens, right? But that was another really a big deal. I think that I thought it was all, I always think I'm under control. And then I find out not always.
That's a great life lesson.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's interesting. How would you say that experience best prepared you for the rest of the course of your life since that day, since you won, and then moving forward? What would you say the biggest lesson that you learned from that experience and how it's helped you and what you do now?
I will tell you that, first of all, I turned 53 on the island. So as far as life experience is concerned, I brought a lot of life experience to the island, whereas there were a lot of young kids on the island that were still mean and green and a little fungus behind the ears and that kind of thing. It was just getting started. So I think I brought a lot of life experience because they would call me Aunt Clarissa. And whenever they had issues or problems, they'd all come talk to me. And so I was one of the elders, if you will, on the island. So that was really cool too, because I've always known that I was a bit of a leader and certainly a caretaker.
Sure.
And that people could rely and depend on me for different things. And they did. They relied and depended on me for different things. That you can go a long time without food. I think that was another really big, when you know that there's no food to be had, you're not hungry. You don't look for it. You don't need it. You need the water, obviously. And certainly we had that rationed. And the other thing is that you can really live with the bare minimum. We were allowed one pair of pants, one blanket, one t-shirt, one sweatshirt, one hairband, because I knew for me in the elements for 2.5 months. And by the way, you wash your hair once a month because even the shampoo is rationed if you get the shampoo kind of thing. And you're washing your hair in the water, in the seawater, right? So how clean is it going to get? So you're going to get used to being very uncomfortable, not as clean. You're going to be used to learning to live with the bare minimum. And I think that it was the overconstruct of our lives that we have so much and we do so much and we buy so much and we consume so much and we hoard so much and much of stuff. And you can get by when you go on an island like that. You learn the importance of food. And when you do get it, how grateful you are to have a handful of rice. You learn also that when you get off of the island and you have your first warm beverage, i.e. a cup of tea, and that warm hits your stomach, it's like you heard the angels sing. It's that thing goes, whoa. When you don't have warmth in your stomach for 3 months, you notice it. So when I say those little things that are actually huge things, that are brought to the fore, that you're reminded of, that you're really grateful for.
Gosh, that's awesome. That is really cool. That subject alone, I could talk to you about for an hour because I know there's so many lessons there. But because I'm also in media and you're somebody I've looked to over the years as an inspiration to me, I'd love for you to talk about, it's Limelight Media, correct?
The Limelight.
In the Limelight. It's such a great name. I'd love for you to talk about your media organization, your vision, and really what got you into media in the first place.
It was Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play. And so in kindergarten, I used to sit on my sit-upon behind Miss Bailey when she was playing the piano, and I was the loudest child in the room, I think. And I would belt the songs out, and I knew all the words because I could remember them really good. And Miss Bailey, I think, there were 4 or 5 different kindergartens, morning classes and afternoon classes. So there were a couple of hundred kids, I'm assuming. I think it was my first greatest honor. And it was one of certainly my crowning achievements when I was chosen to be Mary Poppins, in my rendition of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious brought them to their feet. And I was hooked. Apart from that, Josh, I think you should know that I was told that as a very young age, I was told that I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. And then I say, for those of you that don't know what a phonograph is, Google it. And, I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. And so I was always a talker, and I just loved the stage. I loved, first of all, as a 5-year-old, for me, The Wizard of Oz, wow, or Ava Gardner, Rita Hayworth, wow. And I was this really ugly duckling, gawky kid that never thought that these kinds of things could happen for me. So I was very early on to understand. And then for 25, 30 years, I did nothing else on a stage, near a stage, or with a microphone. So I got to Italy and I started to work as a model, and I did rather well there. I worked rather well. And I got called by TV and they said, we'd like to audition you for a show. And I said, okay. And I did. They said, do you sing? And I said, I sing in the shower. And I was Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play. So they brought me in. competition and I passed it. And I used to sing live TV. I never had a lesson in and this is another life lesson I think is really important. I never had a modeling lesson. I never had an acting lesson. I never had a singing lesson and all of that stuff. And you just are, I was born with it all. I was lucky enough to be born with it and run with, to know what your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. Now, if you were to ask me to rectify the books, or read a contract, or I am not at all. I do not have a left brain. I am completely right-brained. So another really big life lesson, and I know I talk about that also in my book, and they say in business, hire your weaknesses and work your strengths. And I think the same thing goes for everything that we do in life. And certainly for me, it was just easy enough. I was talking to a speech coach the other day. We were doing it on my mastermind, and she said she has a book, and on the back of it, there's a quote by Jerry Seinfeld, and it goes something like this: "I would rather be the guy in the coffin at the funeral than be on stage giving the eulogy." I would rather be the guy in the coffin at the funeral than be at the podium giving the eulogy for the fear of public speaking.
Oh, wow.
I think public speaking is like the number one fear after death, possibly, of all. For me, it's always been, give me the microphone.
Yeah.
With you, I'm sure as well. So there are people that are predisposed, if you will, to be on stage and in front of people. And that's really where I love to be, and it's where I shine. So yeah.
God bless. I wish I could just give you a hug because I'm going through that myself, and because the mission that I have, the vision that I have, the path that I've chosen to go down, it's requiring me to do things that I honestly just don't want to do, because ultimately I know in my heart what I want to be, what I get to be, what I want to do, what I get to do, and that's all I really want. But however, it leaves all of this other stuff that needs to be done too. And I'm trying to find that balance of both, because at my heart, I'm like you. I just give me the stage, I want to serve on a big level.
Fun.
What?
I want to do the fun part.
Yeah, I want to do the fun, right? Because I'm not like I suck at math. and the problem is my wife, she's wired like me. Our kids are wired this way. So no one in the house really wants to deal with the business side, even though we know media, we're in media, have the vision for the future of media. But the business side of it, we don't really care about. We just want to like activate it, use it, help people with it, and that's it. And then utilize the things like the stage, the mic, broadcasting, and so on, TV, film, to do all of that. But trying to manage the business side too at the same time, it is very awkward. So let me ask you something. I'm so glad that you brought this up. There's a lot of people that are now seeing media is the future. Like, you're going to need it. It's not now, where back when you started, like, it was a luxury. You were way ahead of your time as far as like, you were doing the future of media 20 years ago, which is amazing. This is why I'm saying to you, you've served as an inspiration for me, because I followed your journey for at least 10 years. And so seeing that, and now other people are waking up to knowing media is a necessity. This is not a luxury. This is a necessity. Like, it's like the internet. This is where we're going with it. So for people that suck at the business side, but may have the skill for media, for broadcasting, for acting, for voiceover, and so forth, what advice do you have about the business side, or the part they may suck at?
The thing I talk to solopreneurs and entrepreneurs the most is this, and exactly what you're saying is, a lot of times when, the economy sours and your budget is impacted in a negative way, the first thing that they think, let's just get rid of publicity, let's get rid of promotion, let's get rid of the magazine, let's get rid of media altogether, whatever media is for them in the moment. And that is the number one mistake you need not to be making. You don't want to disappear off the radar screen. You don't want your clients to think that you're not viable. You don't want new clients to not be able to find you and to see that what you're doing is current. I think it's the most important thing. Learning how to do media, like, we can do media for people all day long, but what I do is I also teach them how to be in media. In the Limelight is television. It's a podcast and a digital magazine. So in the television piece, I have In the Limelight TV. It's on another network. I'm also looking at another network possibility right now, but it's on another network. And what I do is underneath my channel, people have their shows. So I onboard them, I teach them, I train them, and then for a fee every month, they can now say they are on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV. And that is really, it's the sexy part of as seen on. As seen on is something we've seen on television. Remember the Ronco commercial, all the different things. As seen on is probably three of the most important and impactful words that you'll be able to use in your business. And for us, it's as seen on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and 100 other smart, Daily Motion, 100 other smart television apps. Now, the God part about all that is, do I really care that we're on an app in Seoul, Korea? No, nobody's. No, I don't. But the 100 other television apps, it's the truth when you say that's where you can find my show. And the show is much like what we're doing now. It's this Zoom calls that we make look good. They're not highly produced. They are Zoom calls, and we're doing just fine. This way for people who really have a little bit of the bug and want to learn, think they can't. That's why I wrote a book. If you think you can't, I wrote a book that's going to tell you. And get your brand at the forefront, that people can see it and know that you are relevant.
That's really sound advice. It's good advice. And I love that. I also, the way that you structure your channel makes so much sense, because instead of the problem with these streaming networks, and I was VP of one, and I've been very involved in that. Now I'm doing self-hosting just because I have to avoid censors because a lot of what I talk about, and I've been kicked off of Apple TV and Roku. So this was the only way for me.
Wow.
Yeah. My heart is for degenerates and misfits and outcasts and former trafficking victims and former sexual abuse victims and prisoners and so on. So the kind of wormholes that we get in, we start to uncover things that people don't want out. So I've been famously kicked off now, multiple networks, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. But so this was the only path for me. But that said, what you're doing is the right way, because these other streaming networks, and I'm not going to name them because I won't even some of them are so full of it, it's ridiculous. But they'll promise you all the marketing. They'll promise you, hey, we're going to help you and teach you how to do this. But they don't. You sign up, you pay your $5,000, you pay your $500, you pay your $1,200, all the different prices, and you get nothing from them. The way that you're doing it is actually creating an ecosystem that is self-supporting, and everyone is taking care of each other. You're teaching, you're showing them the ropes, and then also leading by example. That is the proper way to run a streaming network. So I applaud you for that.
Oh, I applaud you for that thing that you got for your iPhone that moves when you do. I want to get one of those. That's really cool. Every time but that's on my wish list. I want to get one of those.
And I don't have a camera crew, so I've got AI that just follows me around.
I love that. And I love the green screen in the back. I love your whole setup. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
So let me just get to the point. If you allow me, and I want to touch upon what you just said, and that is in the acknowledgments of my book. Just not because I want to bring the book in it, but just
I was going to actually go to your book next, but go ahead.
So I acknowledge, this is obviously written by me. I'd like to acknowledge the millions of people all over the world who have been abandoned, abused, beaten, hit, struck, oppressed, depressed, distressed, held back, lied to, cheated on, lost, betrayed, deceived, misled, double-crossed, walked out on, stabbed in the back, sold down the river, stolen from, deserted, discarded, shunned, cast out, dropped, dumped, forgotten, neglected, rejected, and or dejected. You are the sole reason I have written this book.
I love you. I'm so happy that you are not a fraud. We have a lot of, what do you call it? Similar friends. What's the word for that? We have friends in the same ecosystem anyway. But in that world that we've played in, there is a lot of scam artists. There's a lot of people that are full of it. And so you see how things are presented to the world, and you do an excellent job of that. But to literally see that you were as genuine as I wanted you to be makes my heart happy. Because again, it's like meeting your favorite celebrity and you find out they're a schmuck.
Yeah, we've all been down that path, I think.
But it hurts. So cool to meet somebody that I've looked up to and actually see that they're awesome. So anyway, you've written some amazing books, but you have a new book, and I want to hear all about it.
The self-esteem regime, which is It's called a regime because it's an organized way of doing things. And it really is. It's an action plan. I call it it's a manual. For me, it's also a mission and a movement. And I'm thrilled to say it's being sold in many different countries around the world. I would love the idea that for me, I'd be able to become itinerant as I move around the world and make sure. And by the way, the cover is blue for men. If I first got this cover, you'll see it's 3 iterations of blue. It came in orange, pink, and yellow, and it was pretty enough, and it jumped off the shelves at Barnes& and Noble. It was great. It would have been great, but I asked them to make it blue because I wanted men to pick it up as well, because self-esteem doesn't discriminate, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's 12 chapters. Each chapter begins with a reword. We start with release, and we move into rebuild, and then we go into responsibility. We talk about reinvention. There's all kinds of different thought processes, if you will, as you go through the book. And it may take you a minute to get into the first chapter, and it might take a week or so for you to go, what do I have to release? What do I really need to let go of? What is not serving me anymore? And we hear that a lot, but people don't really sit down and you got to do the work in this book.
Matters.
You must do the work in this book to be able to make a change in your life and therefore the change in many others. We often talk about, and I'll give you a couple of the highlights I think that are the most important. When we talk about self-esteem, we talk about, I am enough. He is enough. We are enough. She is enough. I am enough. Enough, if you look it up, and by definition, is only as much as is required, right? So I know that so much more than is required. And I don't want this to become semantics. This is true. You have to be careful about your subconscious, right? Your subconscious will say, I'm only as much as is required, but required by whom? Required by who's deciding, who's defining required? The new catchphrase around town, Josh, so you know, is I am so much more than enough. And I think that's it's just a big step if you can walk into that. It's just like a really powerful place to be standing. I'm so much more than enough. Like, I'm good. And none of this, by the way, has to do with conceit or narcissism. That's a whole different thing. In fact, conceit and narcissism have to do with people that don't have enough self-esteem. So let's be really clear on that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to talk about is taking the high road, right? So honesty, integrity, gratitude, and honor. That we've come away from thinking that being honest is a thing. I think especially with the onslaught of social media, we just put stuff out there because we want to look cool. So we're going to use that filter, or we're going to rent that Lamborghini, or we're going to stand in front of that palatial home and pretend it's ours or whatever. We're going to love you all the same if you rent an apartment. I'm going to love you all the same. The honesty part, all of us being radically honest, not only with ourselves, which is hard work.
Yes, it is.
With others. Integrity, moral principle, moral uprightness. It doesn't mean, it just is, it's such a huge piece, integrity. And it's like a big word. Honesty, integrity for me are probably the top two. They are really, if you can come to any table, any relationship with yourself and with others, and you're coming from really straight up honesty, and honesty is not always going to make you the most popular kid in the room.
Not at all.
You got to be ready for that. And integrity, that's a huge one. People don't even know what it means anymore. So we have to be really careful to be bringing, I think, the best us to the table. My new mantra is I want to be a better person more than I am today. It's just how gratitude, we all know what gratitude is and what we need to be being gratitude for. And then who are we when no one else is in the room? Who are we? Nobody else is looking. When we go back to the first story real quick. We're going out one day. It's one of our exercises. We're taking helicopters to get there. I'm in the front with the pilot and the two pretty girls, the younger girls with their teeny weeny bikinis and all that. They're behind me, and I love them. They were great. But they say to the guy, "Can you do us a favor?" As they're batting their eyelashes. So can you go over there into that little hut right there on the island here in Nicaragua and get us some food, because we're starving. We haven't eaten in a couple of months. And he did. He was very kind. He's out of his own pocket. These people don't have a lot.
Yeah.
His own pocket. He went and bought food and brought it on board. So the girls were happy. He gave them the bag. And at a certain point, I get a tap on my shoulder. And I look back and they're handing me some of the food. And I went, "Oh, no, thanks." And with a smile on my face, I said, "No." Now, I hadn't eaten for months either. And I was back down to my fighting weight. I was back down to my modeling weight. And it was great. And I loved it. And that was a good part about the island. But I knew that would have been a dishonest thing to do, that it wasn't honorable in any way, shape, or form. There were rules to that game, and that anybody else that wasn't able to partake. All the other people that were on the other helicopters, they weren't going to get a bite of this or a morsel of this food. And that did two things. I was real proud of myself because I
Yeah,
was hungry. I was hungry, and I was very proud of myself, and what it did was put a division between me and them now. This action, as for take it for what it was, it created a division. And so they were afraid now because they thought I was gonna say something. Knock yourself out. That's between you and your God, your universe, your Buddha, your Krishna, whatever. You knock yourself out. I'm fine with that. But it also put them in a place where I wasn't a part of the team anymore. I wasn't a part of the tribe. I think because when you do something like that, there's no way they couldn't have been embarrassed. Just no way.
sure.
Even if it was for a moment, and even if it was just for a fraction of a second. So that's my story about honor. People say, "Oh, are you always so honorable?" I miss the mark sometimes.
Sure.
I'm as human as the rest of you all, but I do work on it all the time.
That's it's a simple story, but it's powerful because it reminds me of how other people for it's hard to be an honest cop. And I've no like I've had my run-ins with the police, good and bad. But it's hard to be an honest cop for what you said because it's easy. You see somebody take a
Right.
little bit of money from the stash that they capture or whatever. Like you're pressured into having to do it too, because if not, then they're going to be fearful that you're going to rat, and then that can cause a whole dynamic and cause
That's the whole
problems.
time. Yeah.
So it's hard. It's very hard to be an honest human being, even with the like we have perceived honesty and so on, but I'm like honesty in our heart. Like I'm being truthful. I'm living in integrity. It's very challenging, especially when we're a part of groups and different associations. And I think that people have to really consider what jobs they do, the assignments that they sign up for when they know that they could have that challenge. And if they're not willing to do that, if they're not willing to remain in integrity, I think it's a fair thing for people to do to say, do I really need to be doing this job?
Right.
Because we only have our soul. Like we have ourselves and the mark that we leave on the planet. We're only really responsible for our actions. And yet
Absolutely.
those actions always have consequences. Even good
Always.
things that we do have consequences.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
love that you said this because it really is, it exposes the challenge it is to remain integrous.
yes,
But at the same time, it also reveals the importance of that because we have to live with ourselves.
we do.
And I was a horrible liar. I don't know, it's a movie like my book, my wife and I wrote, The Devil Inside Me, which is my true story. I wasn't living in integrity.
Right.
In fact, I would, of all the bad things that I did with my life, I would say that lying and gaslighting and all that was the worst of it. The lying to women to make them think that they were crazy, to rob them of their intuition, like that was a real crime. And for me now, I love that you brought up honesty because now living in truth is such an important thing. However, even with that, we have to be careful about putting our truth on other people
Yeah.
because that can be, whether it's offensive, sometimes it can be violating, or sometimes it's just not the right time. And so I've learned something that I would love your thoughts on. I've started asking myself, will this give me peace? Anytime that I want to act on anything, will it give me peace? And
Yes.
that has helped me slow down enough to go, you know what, maybe I'm not going to say that today.
Yeah. Will it give me peace? Will it bring me peace? Absolutely. And I totally agree. We talk about going the extra mile. And a lot of times we think it means the extra mile in a professional sense,
Yeah.
forgetting that the extra mile is the loneliest mile. And sometimes it's the darkest mile. And sometimes it's the mile when you're going to be walking through the horrific thunderstorm without boots and galoshes and a raincoat and an umbrella. And it could be a lot of other things, that extra mile, but there's light at the end of that tunnel. And it's so bright and bold and beautiful that to me, it's a no brainer. If I can do Survivor, I can walk the extra mile through that storm with no problem at all. And knowing that when you live at a certain, I'm going to call it a vibrational level, when you start to live in this kind of integrity, honesty, and with honor, and again, I'm imperfect am I, but I do try my very best, you will see that you are going to lose relationships. A lot of the toxicity is going to fall away, thank God. Your inner circle is to become much smaller. And a lot of people are going to start really not like you very much because they don't get you. They don't understand you. They don't understand. They see it as a very rigid way of being. And whereas I live happily and I live softly, I think a lot of people would think maybe I'm hard, but It's that important to me that I live my value system and I take the high road.
I love it. I could talk to you for days. I would love to have you back sometime. We literally could just sit here and chat with you all day. But for the sake of time, let's wind it up. And I would love for you to plug anything you want to plug. Say any last words that you have. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. The self-esteem regime, it is an action plan for becoming the confident person you want to be. It's 12 chapters. Do the work. You're going to be a whole different person. I think the one thing that we need to be constantly working on was apart from work is ourselves. And when I started down the self-help journey, it was one little bookshelf in all the bookstores 30 years ago. Now it's a multi-billion, personal development is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you walk into Barnes and Noble to find my book, you're going to see that it's rows and rows and rows of books that are there to help you. And in these very uncertain times, I think that we need to be spending much more time on our personal development, mostly to keep our sanity, but certainly to become better people. The only thought that I will, and so get the book again, Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and in the bookstores, really great. I'm thrilled for that. And I think just real quick, Josh, when I found my book, the last name being Burt, next to Brene Brown, who's a regular at Oprah, next to Deepak Chopra and Dr. Joe Dispenza, I knew that, that for me was a crowning moment because I was in the middle of all these personal development titles. Remember also that this is self-help. It is not shelf help. So buy the book and read it. Yeah, that's really important. Do the work. And then here's a thought that I'll leave you with too, that I just love it. I just love when I bring this again to the forefront, and that is loyalty is when you have my back behind my back. And I love also that I can turn that around and say loyalty is when I have your back behind your back. And it's another really great self-esteem moment. People think self-esteem is, don't compare yourself to others. Okay, yes, it is. That's part of it too. That's self-esteem 101. But self-esteem goes so broad and so deep. And who are you at the water cooler when everybody's dishing on Susie Q? Are you fomenting with the tribe, or are you saying, hey, I know Susie Q and that's not how I know her.
Yeah.
Or maybe she was having a bad day. Why don't we just give her a hug and get on with our day instead of just doing the thing? And yeah, loyalty is when you have my back behind my back.
I love it. Again, I'm a bigger fan than I ever was, and I'm so grateful for your time. I cannot wait to buy your book and read it and use it like the manual that it is. And I'm just so grateful for your time. Thank you for being here.
Josh, so much.